Good morning, all. Hope you all are doing well today. Um, this lecture I want to dedicate to talk about the Taylor six segment strategy wheel, as this will be a vital part to your assignment that will be talking about copy testing, which you will see a link about copy testing on your As You Learn page. So make sure to check that out. Ignore the announcements. That was for another class, but the lesson for copy testing is still very much there, and I will give the instructions a little later on, but that's not due until later of next week. So I want to talk about this particular model, and this is this is kind of a very close to home persuasion model to me. Not only because this is one of the bases of where I wrote my dissertation by using this, but also it really gets into the areas of persuasion and the applicability. I know a couple of y'all have talked to me in the past and said, Dr. Daniel, there's a lot of theoretical based work. I want to talk more applicable when it comes to persuasive tactics. And so, one of the places I wanted to go with talking about persuasive tactics has to do with the fact about writing copy for things like advertising and PR. And I noticed that most of y'all are of some sort, either advertising or PR majors, or at least have some major that would be conducive of either one of those things. So this is a very helpful model in terms of how to write copy and how to use copy. And with that, taking this kind of information about how people are persuaded at any given point, and how this message works in terms of when you're advertising to a group of people, what are the things that you talk about, how do you frame a message, because there is so much more to advertising obviously than to just buy whatever it is that I'm selling per se. There's identity involved, there is need involved, there is social benefits or sensory benefits that go on. And so this is, again, a theoretical model, but the applicability for how you write persuasive arguments is going to be very beneficial here. So let's go ahead and jump into this model here. And you can see it right here. And pardon the image here, it's a little grainy, but this strategy wheel is based on writing copy. And again, writing copy on public relations or advertising or what have you. And the idea here is, what are some of the tactics that people who use advertising messages use when they come to trying to persuade other people, their audience here? And so Dr. Taylor talked about two different views here. So there's two sides of this wheel here. There are the transmission view, which is right here, and the ritual view, which is right here. So we're going to go over these and then talk about what each one of these segments means. So first and foremost, you've got ration, acute need, and a routine in the transmission view. As we see, they are claim-based, transporting information, they're rational, and they're product-focused. The idea behind the transmission view is this is based on argument, and it's based on using logical reasoning to say this is why you need something. So if you look in terms of talking about certain theories called the elaboration likelihood model, there's a lot that has to be processed in terms of a full-fledged argument in what's called the central route. So when you're going through the central route of the flow chart of the elaboration likelihood model, you have to see that people that are going to pay attention to central based messages are attentive, willing to listen. They really take the time to flesh out these messages. And with that, the messaging and the copy that's being written in this case is very logical. So when I write these things, I want to make it so that the product solves a problem, or it's very rational as to why you would buy it. So let's go over a couple of these. So again, we've got rational, acute need, and routine. So ration or rational is basically what it sounds like. It is rational appeals to help you buy a particular product or persuade you to buy a particular product. If I'm using a rational claim, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you might have questions for already. I may keep it very simple to say, I would want you to purchase this because it makes sense. You need certain equipment to have a car start and drive. So I might talk about the performance benefits of motor oil that would help your car last a long time. And so that can be a rational claim. I can use rational arguments to talk about like a spark plug and to say, this is something that you will need. And, you know, it's rational because your car's not going to start without it. So when it comes to rational based claims, it is very much like if you were trying to sell a car, the extended warranty that goes around it. Or if I'm trying to pay attention to a rational argument, I may not be focusing on how cool the car looks. I might be focusing on safety features. I may be focusing on gas mileage. I may be focusing on certain equipment that's in the car that would either keep me safe or is for my own entertainment, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things within rational that you can argue that it makes perfect sense to use here. The next one within the transmission view is what's called acute need, and that means I need it right now. And so you can think of some products that can be sold in the capacity that you can't wait to have this. You must have that. And creating need is somewhat difficult, but at the same time, you can think of products that you use very frequently that if you don't have, it's not a good thing. I mean, I mentioned using rational as far as a spark plug, but it probably would fit just as well as an acute need message to say, if you don't have a spark plug, your car's not going to start. So you need to purchase this thing right now. It would be the same with like something like toilet paper. Toilet paper would be a great product to talk about in acute need because if you don't have it, this is not a good scenario here. And there have been arguments and advertisements that have addressed that. There are others that bring in weird persuasive appeals when it comes to something like toilet paper. The most rational to me is through acute need to say, hey, toilet paper, you need it. So you're going to buy it at some point or another here. So, but it is interesting about how these can combat. I'm sorry, I'm staying on talking about like toiletries and so forth. But, you know, if I wanted to do something like talking about rational to kind of counteract against the acute need, I can easily talk about something like a bidet to counterbalance to say this acute need. So it's like, yeah, I still need toilet paper, but at the same time, if I have a bidet, for instance, and using the rational appeals, it's less likely that I need this particular product. So, and I bring that up mainly because I've seen influencers talk about this when it came to the toilet paper shortage we had during COVID. So anyway, it's just kind of a interesting thing to talk about when it comes to what is the rational argument, what is our claim base we're using here. All right, next one is routine. What are some products that you purchase on the regular? Think about this in terms of what Amazon has done in the past. And I don't know if y'all have any of those little purchase clickers. They're pretty cool. That certain products that you own, you might have a purchase clicker to say, I am going to routinely buy that. So like laundry stuff. So detergent, fabric softener, maybe dryer sheets, whatever it may be, you need those things. And you need them consistently. You're going to make sure that this is part of your routine. You're going to buy them. So a lot of these routines will come into things like seasonal or daily routines. So daily routines, again, go with something like laundry detergent, but you can use routine for something like a special occasion or something seasonal. I made a conversation point with some of my advertising campaigns students in the past. They were doing Ocean Spray as their client. And one of the things that came up was the idea of why is pumpkin spice so popular? And it's part of it is because of the messaging strategy that always comes around the fall time of year as a routine. The routine here is that you're going to purchase pumpkin spice of some sort during the fall season. It's almost a ubiquitous argument in this case. And so it's pretty interesting how these advertising campaigns come into play when it comes to you are going to purchase something at a particular time. And honestly, this came up quite a lot when we were talking about Ocean Spray and like cranberry juice, for instance. Like, when do you buy cranberry juice? People buy it for their health because it's been found to have benefits in terms of prevention of prostate cancer. But the other thing that came up was during the routine of when we buy cranberries is usually during Thanksgiving and during Christmas or the holiday season. So that will come up. So you can kind of see that all of these are product based. Rational, I'm talking about maybe the extended warranty of a car. Acute need, I'm talking about the fact that you need toilet paper. Routine, I'm talking about the fact that you use this product during a particular part of the year, or it's part of your daily routine here. And so all of these things are claim based, and it really does funnel under the central root of the elaboration likelihood model. And I will talk about that in a Theory Thursday video for y'all. Let's switch gears. Now, Taylor also talks about these three, which is called the ritual view. It's image based, sharing and communing. It's emotional and experience focused. So if these three here are going to be the central route of the elaboration likelihood model, this is going to be the peripheral route, where you're going to have persuasive tactics that may not necessarily be as strong per se or hold longevity, but they still could be very meaningful. And I'll get into that here in a few minutes. But again, I really like this idea of image-based or experience-focused, because that's what they are. And you might have these products that take in not really a whole lot of rational or claims-based material here, but more about selling the experience. It's less of buy my product, but and more of be a part of our product or service or whatever it is. So you see the three here: ego, social, and sensory. I like talking about these. These are, oddly enough, some of the most common advertising appeal, especially when you don't have a lot of time to extend a message to an audience. So let's go over these. First and foremost, we have what's called ego. Now, ego has to do with kind of the statement that they used in the article was, I am me. I am me. And the reason they chose that kind of little specific set of words is that this product or service is very much a part of your identity. And it may sound a little extreme to where you would say, Dr. Daniel, I don't know that I have a product that is encapsulated a part of my identity. And it may not be the full extent of like personal identity, like you are very much connected with this particular brand, but you may have preferences and that you may attach small parts of your identity to. So like, take for example, if the Mac versus PC argument, it's still going on. And I mean, people in our office still talk about which ones they use. This is an ego product. The whole campaigns that they used, and it was brilliant of what Mac did, was they did, hi, I'm a Mac and I'm a PC. If y'all have ever seen those commercials, they're really smartly done when it comes to ego, because it says, I am this particular brand. and these are the features that I use. And therefore, I have this as kind of a status symbol for me, which comes up a lot in things like coffee, for instance. Carrying around a particular coffee cup can actually project some identity to, I enjoy coffee from Starbucks, or I enjoy coffee from like an Espresso News or something. To have that brand name out there to kind of show that, oh, I like small batch brewed coffee, for instance. And so, whether you know it or not, you are projecting that identity about the kind of coffee you drink. It's the same thing within like having a PlayStation versus an Xbox. A lot of technology, especially for rival companies, comes an involvement here in ego. I jokingly say that Burt's Bees has probably way too much of my paycheck when it comes to things like chapstick. I don't have a lot of brands that I'm extremely brand loyal to, but Burt's is one of those that I stay pretty true to. And it is part of my ego, if you will, because I pretty much leave them around everywhere, and that is kind of a problem. So anyway, that's kind of where ego sits in, and the idea of personal identity comes into play here. Next, we're going to look into social. Now, social is pretty unique because now we're focusing on experiences with other people. So it's not just my personal identity, it's now my social identity. And this can come in two different facets, as the traditional message strategy versus what I've researched and what I've argued in the past in some of my publications, where social kind of expands a little bit here. And I'll talk about that here in a second. Traditionally speaking, social kind of has this group involvement advertising, or public relations we're dealing with here, that we're trying to say that you're part of a community. Something along the lines of, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, to where it's a communal thing. You're part of this family of insurance. That sounded just weird for me to say. But this will come up a lot in things like beer, for instance. Alcohol does this quite frequently in terms of what they can and can't do for FTC restrictions. So with the Federal Trade Commission, which regulates advertising, ultimately you can't show people actually consuming alcohol. When you look at those commercials, they're not actually consuming wine or liquor or beer or anything like that. They're actually drinking something else that just happens to look like those things. That's part of self-regulation. But when it comes to social cues here, you often see, especially for like light lagers, for instance, where a lot of people are sitting around, drinking, having a good time, and being with one another. It kind of communicates this togetherness. Games in a lot of cases. So like, for instance, the Wii, when it first came out, it wasn't, let's show how fun this game looks, which could be, rational or sensory or even ego. In this case, we wanted to show, look how much fun we're having together while we're playing this. It's a social activity with other people. This has come up a lot for like pizza commercials, for instance, where people sit together and hang out and make it a movie night, or another game night or something. Pizza is a good communal food, so why it fits so well within social. Now there's another area that I've argued where social comes in, and it's social with the person who's making the message. So this comes up in a lot of influencer discourse. So if an influencer comes in and says, I particularly like that product, you may feel like you just want to be a part of the community that they're a part of. So the spokesperson might belong to a certain nonprofit, or they ask for donations or something like that. A very typical like public relations message, and you might be influenced to donate to that, which is again a very social thing, It might not necessarily be rational. Excuse me. Sorry about that. It may not necessarily be rational. It might be. It might be that. Hold on. Goodness gracious. I'm so sorry. It may be that you want to donate to the betterment of a certain cause. It also may be that you want to be a little bit more involved with this organization or this influencer that you're talking to. So again, that's a very common thing. So those are kind of the two things within social. The last one I want to talk about is sensory. And this comes up quite a bit when we're talking a lot about advertising in terms of making something look good. And this can be any sense. So you can have advertisements that you see something that looks really good. You can have advertisements in a magazine where you smell something, like they're cologne ads that will actually, or perfume ads that will, you peel back a part of the page and you can smell the perfume there. And it's brilliant advertising and really the sensory appeal to where you're smelling and go, that smells really good. I would consider buying that. Even things like texture. We focus so much on digital advertisements, but print ads do just as well in terms of sensory, because you are able to touch something. And I've often talked a lot about like taste, for instance, for a sense that, yeah, it's hard to communicate taste, except for just, this looks really good. But then it comes in 5-Gum. I don't even know if they're still on the market. I think they still are, but I'm not 100% sure. 5-Gum, what's these advertisements that 5-Gum has done in the past where they're like, this is what it feels like to chew 5-Gum. And it's actually brilliant advertising because they show these like elaborate scenarios in the staged environment that doesn't even look real, because I don't think in a lot of ways it is real. But it shows the sensory of what it would feel like for taste, which is pretty cool. And they do it really well. So all of these, again, are based on the experience of doing something. It's image-based in this case. It's not so much the kind of this rational area. It's not claims-based. Now, there is an argument to be made, and I hope that you will think about this when you're conducting your project here, is that the argument has always been within the transmission view that these three, because they're in the central route of the elaboration likelihood model, they are always the most important decisions that you will make, and because they're claim-based and they have a lot of longevity. Now, there have been some scholars that have taken this side of, not necessarily Taylor's, but the peripheral side, and said, you know what, peripheral messages can be just as persuasive, if not more so, using these three, for instance. And the argument that they would make is, and it's some of the most interesting forms of advertising is makeup, for instance. So makeup has been kind of this area where, let me take one step back. One of the appeals that always comes up in the elaboration likelihood model, and when it comes to peripheral, is the person who's the spokesperson for this product considered attractive? And typically, if you're looking at an advertisement and you see someone that's attractive, you're going to think, hey, it's in this particular area, probably sensory. You're saying, perceivably, this person to me is very attractive. Therefore, you've got my attention, right? It may not necessarily be credible, and it may not necessarily be the longevity of it, but at the current moment, we've got kind of a social and sensory thing. I would like to hang out with this person, and I think this person is very attractive. So those two things come up right off the bat. Now, many people would say this is a peripheral motivation here, to where I'm not actually focusing on the arguments that are being made. I'm focusing on how pretty this person looks. So here's the thing about makeup, though. The idea of makeup in this case is to highlight features or, make it. I think my favorite line about it is the best way to use makeup is to make it look that you're not wearing any at all. to kind of highlight the natural beauties and tones of a person's face or skin or whatever it may be. But isn't the idea of all this, all three of these right here when it comes to makeup, that all three of these are used in a very rational way? The fact that you see this model that is showing off the makeup here is rational in its own way. Because I find this person attractive, I find that this is a rational argument because that's what makeup is used for, right? And so there are some arguments to be made here, and I would love to hear more. I might actually put that up as a forum post if you've been watching this. So we'll see. We'll see if we'll put that up actually. But anyway, this is the 6-segment strategy wheel. What I'm going to do as an assignment is have you take one product and use messaging for that one product from all 6 of these segments. It's pretty fun, and it's a good way to kind of rack your brain about how this would look. So anyway, thank you all so much for listening in. I will be on the lookout for your assignments, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day.